Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Poe, and today I'm doing week 41 of my 2021 reads, part 1. So this week I read quite a few different things, so I'm splitting it up into a part 1 and part 2. Part 1 today, I'm going to talk about the general things that I read this week, and then in part 2, which I'll post later this week, I'll wrap up the things that I read for Latinxathon, which I had such a fun time reading for. I just read some middle grade and a ton of picture books that were all so good. So if you like Kid Lit, definitely check out that part 2, and if you don't like it, you might want to skip it. Content warnings and timestamps are in the description box below. So this week I read The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, which I buddy read with Alicia at Pretty Brown Eye Reader, who I'm going to link below. I was so glad to have Alicia as a buddy reading partner for this because I have been so intimidated by Toni Morrison for such a long time. I've heard that Morrison's books are really, modern classics that you definitely should read, but they have very heavy content. So I've been wanting to pick one up for multiple years, and Alicia very kindly said that she would reread The Bluest Eye in order for me to have a buddy reading partner, and that was just so wonderful. Alicia is one of kind of my oldest friends on BookTube. She does so much cool stuff on her channel regarding poetry. During April, she does an entire month of reading poems. It's really great. So I was very excited to buddy read this, and I'm so glad that I did because this book had a lot of layers and a lot of things to process. It was a heavy book. Just as everybody says, Toni Morrison's writing is very heavy. So this is a book that was published in the 60s, but I think takes place in the 40s. And it's about a couple of little black girls and the way that the world sort of sees them and treats them. And in particular, we follow kind of a narrator who is trying to process what's going on in the world around her, and especially trying to process what's happening to another little girl. And that little girl, somebody who kind of wishes for having blue eyes, just because she wants to be seen as beautiful. It is a heartbreaking story, and it is just really beautifully written, lots of layers, lots of themes in this, lots of commentary on society. There was an afterword in this where Toni Morrison talked about how she wrote this sort of in this era in the 60s when really people were embracing the idea of loving their own beauty, loving their own blackness, rather than what up until that point had been a lot of internalized racism and feeling that the only thing that's beautiful is kind of like the blonde hair, blue-eyed version of people. And so it was heartbreaking. There's a lot of difficult content, especially child abuse and sexual abuse. So definitely check out the content warnings, but it is something that truly is very well written. I loved a lot of the imagery that was used, and I loved having Alicia to kind of discuss it with. So I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I definitely want to read more Morrison in the future, but probably not until I'm in that kind of mood where I can handle it. Next, I read The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. Micaiah Johnson is eligible for a Hugo for Best New Author this year, so I'd wanted to get to this, plus Kristen at Kristenelle SFF Reader, who I will link below, really loves this book, so I was excited to read it. The premise of this book is basically that we have a woman who lives on a world where they have discovered a way to traverse to other multiverses, other worlds that are very similar to their own, but only people who have died in this alternate version of these worlds can actually go visit those worlds. So you can't go to a world where an alternate version of you already exists. And so what they end up doing is hiring people who live in slums and things like that, who basically don't have a lot of chances to survive on most worlds, so they can go to a lot of other worlds, and they basically pick up data drops and things like that, and that's used for analysts on the home world to kind of, make money. So this is such an interesting sci-fi because it has a lot of really cool kind of social and political themes. I really liked the way that this book used the kind of sci-fi idea of traversing between multiverses in order to explore a theme. I recently read The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez, and I really liked in that one as well the way that that used the science fiction idea at the core of the story to explore themes. And this one does the same thing, but with a different theme. So in this one, we have really the title of this, The Space Between Worlds. We have this woman who basically on her own world comes from the slums, but is moved into this very, rich city where the people who own the equipment to send people to different multiverses are. And so she's moved from very low class to very high class, from very poor to very rich. But she stands out, she isn't somebody who fits in there. And so she feels very in between those social classes and those worlds. And then she's also literally in between worlds. She's in between these worlds that she's traversing. And there's a lot of also kind of philosophical explorations of the idea of the universe as well, and kind of what it means to be in that process of transitioning between the worlds too. So there's so many really cool themes that are explored in this that I really, really liked. I loved the tone of this as well. It was a little bit of a slower paced, a little almost melancholy in a sense. It's very introspective for the character. She's really trying to understand what she is doing with her life and how she fits in and how she navigates it and where she wants to be. And I think it's so interesting. I did find though that at times it got maybe just a little bit angsty. There's some relationship drama in here. There's also some decisions that I think are maybe not the best. This is a character who's supposed to be extremely savvy when it comes to how to survive and how to manipulate people and things like that. And there's a couple of times towards the end of the book where she makes some decisions that I feel are more to advance the plot rather than because they super fit for the character. But I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and for sure I'm going to pick up anything else that I see Micaiah Johnson publish. Next, I finished Texts from Jane Eyre by Daniel M. Lavery. This is a reread for me. Sush and I have listened to this on audio every October for the past 4 years, and we kind of love it so much. I'm not sure that this is going to work for everybody, but every time we listen to it, we enjoy it more. So it's a very short audiobook. It's maybe 2 hours long, and it is kind of a humor comedy, sort of satire of works of literature. And so the basic premise of this is that we have text conversations between literary characters or authors. And it goes kind of throughout time. You have some from ancient Greek texts, through, Victorian stuff, through modern things like the Babysitter's Club. There are so many things in this that just crack us up every time. The Wuthering Heights one is hilarious. I love the Edgar Allan Poe one. And then it was very funny because this time, listening through it, we realized that the one kind of parodying Oliver Twist, the way that Oliver is played, he says some things very similar to the way that Sush says them, and now neither of us can unhear that. And so every time Sush says, "Yes, please," we just hear this little Oliver voice. It's very, very funny. We maybe have been quoting it for the rest of the week. It's just something that I find so hilarious. And also every year that we reread it, sometimes we've read more of the original works that it's based on, and it kind of fills in some of those gaps about why those jokes were made. I think that even if you don't know what these are based on, you'll find it funny. But if you do know what they're based on, it's even funnier because it's just so ridiculous how true a lot of that is. Again, I don't think that necessarily the humor in this will land for everybody, but it's really working for us. And I really like the audiobook narrators because there's 2 of them, and they just do such a fun job of all of the different voices, and they do very I believe, not great British accents, which just adds to the ridiculousness of everything. It's very over the top, and I I really have a fun time with this. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars this time around, but I'm positive that I will re-listen to this every year as long as I have access to it. It's so great. And then lastly, I read books 3 and 4 in the Holidays with the Wongs romance contemporary series by Jackie Lau, A Fake Girlfriend for Chinese New Year, and A Big Surprise for Valentine's Day. So this series has 4 novellas in it, and each of them focuses on a different holidays. They're each holiday stories for 4 siblings in the Wong family whose parents have decided that they need to hurry up and get married. And so in the first book, they kind of try to set all of these siblings up with somebody, which does not work out. But all of the siblings are a little motivated to try to find their own person to be with in order to get their parents off their back. So in book 3, A Fake Girlfriend for Chinese New Year, this one is a friends to lovers story. So each of the books kind of explores a little bit of a trope. And in this one of the Wong brothers has a friend that he sees at the bar every Friday and they hang out. She's a dentist, and they both have bonded over the past couple of years of being pretty bitter about some relationships that they'd previously had that had not worked out. And he decides to ask her if she'll be his fake girlfriend in order to get his parents off his back so that they don't try to set him up again. And she says sure, because she's had a crush on him forever. So this is an interesting one. I do like a lot of the family stuff, and it is a very gentle and sweet story, but I really struggle, I think, with the trope of friends to lovers where there is an unrequited love. So because the heroine in this has had a huge crush on this guy for years, there's like some tinge of unhealthy for me, for her to continue that friendship and then for her to get involved in a relationship with this guy who really in the beginning just sees her as friends. So that part was not so much my style, and I just kind of couldn't buy into the relationship so much. It just didn't work for me as well. I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. And then book 4, A Big Surprise for Valentine's Day, follows the Wong sister. She's the youngest of the batch, and she doesn't try to get a fake boyfriend. What she tries to do is get a sex friend. So she realizes that she's very bad at getting into relationships. She's had a long string of very not great boyfriends, and she kind of swears off dating, but it's been a long time and she wants sex. She's a very sexual person, and so when she runs into an old childhood friend at the grocery store one day who's gone away and then come back after having become a doctor, she propositions him and they go ahead and become sex friends, only to, of course, develop feelings later on. I did like how this kind of switched the trope, having the heroine be the one who is afraid of commitment, who just wants sex, that sort of thing. But this book was a little bit heavier on the erotica side than perhaps is my taste. And it was a little stressful just seeing the guy totally fall in love with the girl without her necessarily wanting to be in a relationship. So again, I think that I struggled with this one as well, because we've got one person who fully wants to be in a relationship and the other person who's not sure that they want to be in a relationship. But this one I liked a little bit more, so I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Okay, so that wraps up part 1 for this week. I will have part 2 later on this week, but if you guys have read any of these books, or if you have any thoughts, anything you want to chat with me about, just leave me a comment down below.